Nam sibilam quidem cumis ego ipse oculis meis vidi in ampulla pendere, et cumili pueri dicere. Once I saw with my own eyes the Cumaean Sibyl hanging in a jar, and when the boys asked her, "Sibyl, what do you want?" she answered, "I want to die." What better companion could a forlorn wanderer in the nether shades take with him than a bough that would be a lamp to his feet as well as a rod and staff to his hands? Armed with it, he might boldly confront the dreadful spectres that would cross his path on his adventurous journey. The Golden Bough is a potent energy source, holding the essence of many technological marvels. Good evening, and no matter when you happen to be listening to this, it is always evening here at Tom's Terror Trove. On tonight's dive into some of the whys and wherefores of Project Moon lore, we're turning a baleful eye toward the Golden Boughs, the acquisition of which serves as one of the primary plot drivers of Limbus Company. Where do they come from? What do they do? And how deep do their roots, pun 100% intended, go as far as, in our world, meaning, myth, and magic is concerned? And as far as the game itself goes, I'm still enjoying it immensely. I've been slowly making my way through the cantos, stumbling through my first mirror dungeon, and trying to apply as many rupture status effects as I possibly can. Also, that bit in Canto 2 with the sobbing gambler being forced to shake maracas as he's led away from the table absolutely cracked me up. In fact, that's just one of quite a few moments that have really made me laugh in this game. I wasn't expecting that at all. I have drawn from two major sources for today's episode. The Aeneid, 29 to 19 BCE, written by one Publius Vergilius Maro. Yeah, that's right, Vergil. And interesting to note about V's and W's in classical Latin, and C's for that matter. They've changed in the way that they have become to be pronounced over time. So if you know classical Latin, or actually if you've played Fallout New Vegas, or probably seen Season 2 of the TV show, which I have not, but I have played the game, you'll remember there's like a distinction of some characters knowing the pronunciation of Caesar as Kaiser, and of course Ave Caesar, Awe. This unfortunately makes Julius Caesar's famous saying, Veni Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, sound slightly ridiculous, as if he did indeed say it, it probably would have been Weni Widi Wiki. Anyway, that's today's bit of linguistic trivia. The other source is, unsurprisingly, The Golden Bough, 1890, written by Sir James George Frazer. These were some weighty tomes, and to demonstrate the weight of the heavy concepts that we're grappling with here, I conducted a small experiment involving some volumes of equivalent age to Frazer's. Ow. As always, these episodes are really just kind of jumping off points, little samplers that I hope will encourage you in your own reading, listening, playing, and watching. Maybe there'll be some information that is new or surprising to you. Maybe something will spark you off in vehement disagreement. I learned so much from all the comments in my previous Project Moon videos, and I have no doubt that the same will be true here. Thank you to everyone who took the time to write in, so to speak. So let us, to paraphrase Al Swearingen, compose our thoughts, tropes, and gambits for the talk between us that is yet to come. What do we know about the Golden Boughs of Limbus Company, the game? Well, they're a relatively recent discovery. They can be found anywhere. They are a potent energy source. They arise, perhaps, after having been steeped in the waters of many rivers since their saplinghood. They possess the capacity to realize the thoughts or imaginations of people. And what else have we got down here? Just resonances, fathoms. Okay, so there's a lot to look at here. We probably won't get to resonances and fathoms today. But let's see how much we can manage. And of course, most importantly of all, these Golden Boughs are sought by the titular Limbus Company, and more importantly, provide a driving motivation for the adventures of the LCB. They're a little bit of a MacGuffin. I'll try not to use that word too often, beyond the title of this video, of course, otherwise this is going to start getting very TV tropes circa 2013. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've whiled away many a happy hour on TV tropes. So, as I set out to do in my previous episodes on Limbus Company, I aim to see how the literary precursors and sources for the Project Moon mythos can potentially enrich our understanding and enjoyment of the travails of the sinners, fixers, and, of course, our beloved manager. For tonight's topic, we've got two really obvious ones. Influences, I mean. I mentioned them at the start of the episode, and we're pretty much going to stick with them throughout. First of all, the Aeneid, particularly Book 6. So, the Aeneid, an epic poem in Latin, was written by Vergil. I'm going to call him Vergil rather than Vergilius or Vergilius. It's just a little bit more succinct. But yes, that Vergil. It was written as a kind of rumination on the human spirit's need to persevere, the renewing and healing power of myth and how it intersects with and informs a people's understanding of their history and of themselves. In concrete terms, it tells the story of a band of survivors from Troy, post-war, and their journey across the Mediterranean from what is now present-day Turkey to Latium, site of the future Rome. In Book 6, past and future mingle as Aeneas descends into the underworld to meet with his father's shade, who prophesies to him the future of Rome. In order to do so, however, he must first, among other things, pluck a golden bough from a tree in an adjacent forest. And he gets the instructions on how to do all this from the Cumaean Sibyl, a prophetess. Okay. Golden Bough mentioned. Now we're getting somewhere. It's about the journey, not the destination. Vroom vroom. The Sibyl says to Aeneas, I'm going with the Conington translation of 1886 here, Et insano juvat indulgere labori, accipe quae paragenda. If naught will quench your madman's thirst, then learn what duties claim you first. Deep in a mass of leafy growth, its stem and foliage golden both, a precious bough there lurks unseen, held sacred to the infernal queen. Around it bends the whole dark grove, and hides from view the treasure trove. A key idea that helps illuminate the link between Vergil's bough and Limbus Company is one particular interpretation of the poem, that it is allegorical, its motive force derived from the philosophical work De Rerum Natura by the philosopher Lucretius. This will become clear shortly, especially when we talk about the use of the golden boughs in Limbus Company as energy sources, and will tie into George Frazer's book on comparative mythology. De Rerum Natura. De Rerum Natura was an extraordinary poem from the 1st century BCE that explored the science of physics through poetic language and metaphors. Hugely influential in its day, it disappeared for much of the Middle Ages, only to be rediscovered in 1417. And many of the extraordinary range of ideas that it covers, including atomism, the nature of the mind and soul, and even evolution, would be taken up by the great thinkers of the Renaissance. In Chapter 6 of the Aeneid, there is a clear verbal correspondence between souls enclosed in darkness, clausae tenebris, and the bough that shadows enclose, claudunt umbrae. And Aeneas must later give up the bough, an act that has been interpreted as letting go of his Trojan soul, freeing himself from the past and looking forward to the bright new future of Rome. This notion of shedding old identities, contracts, even souls of a sort, is one of the many powerful themes running through Limbus Company. Now, Lucretius actually argued that the soul, like all things in existence, is made up of atoms, and because these atoms will one day drift apart, the human soul is not immortal. Lucretius thus argues that death is simply annihilation, and that there is no afterlife. Nevertheless, the idea of death and rebirth, with or without the survival of an immortal soul, is one that powerfully follows through into some of the main conclusions of The Golden Bough by Frazer. Something also quite interesting to note is that, while in the underworld, Aeneas observes a certain river, Ding, ding, ding! For the next episode, I'm going to get a little bell or something I can ring whenever we stumble across a textual reference not immediately related to our episode topic. Anchises, Aeneas' father, tells him that the river is named Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, and that the spirits filling the air above it, now in the form of bees, formerly lived on earth in human bodies, having lost all memory of their former existence after drinking the water of this river. These souls are awaiting their turn to be born again in new bodies, with new identities that have already been assigned to them. Now, the name of that river will almost certainly be familiar to those of you, most of you, I imagine, who have experienced Canto 7. So, the Aeneid Chapter 6 furnishes us with the form and primary function of the Golden Bough. But it's with Frazer's late 19th century work, titled after the branch from Vergil's epic, where things really start to come into focus and become hopelessly tangled all at the same time. See, Frazer's book is an anthropological work of comparative religion and mythology, which, although its theories and speculations are rejected by almost all anthropologists today, has had an enormous influence on artists, writers, musicians, and magicians. Not the close-up with coins and saw you in half kind, but more the Aleister Crowley secret society circa 1910 kind. Project Moon's mingling of magic and technology, psychology and religion is a heady brew, and one that an understanding of Frazer's work now can perhaps help clarify. Frazer claims that the legend of rebirth was central to almost all of the world's mythologies, and I quote, "We both hold that in the mental evolution of humanity, an age of magic preceded an age of religion, and that the characteristic difference between magic and religion is that, whereas magic aims at controlling nature directly, religion aims at controlling it indirectly through the mediation of a powerful supernatural being or beings to whom man appeals for help and protection." Frazer refers to something called the web of thought. Now, it is true that this web is described as changing historically, but such change is not a necessary progression. The human mind, in Frazer, is conceived as an entity in which the black, red, and white threads of magic, religion, and science respectively interweave. Science, coming later on the scene, seemingly is more tenuous than the so-called primitive parts, which interminably and persistently intrude into the veneer of civilization. Now, beyond the cold, hard facts of anthropological study, there are other ways of looking at Frazer's work, of course. Some of these lenses are somewhat contradictory, and the Golden Bough sits at the centre of a kind of web of discourses. One article that I took a look at was an investigation of certain discrepancies, but made use of the idea of intertextuality, according to which meanings of a text are located within, as I said before, the discursive traditions to which the text responds and within which it participates actively in the production of meanings. Superficially, the Golden Bough is easily perceived to occupy a place within a web of discourses: folklore, the history of religion, classical studies, social anthropology, as well as literary criticism and even literature itself, especially according to the ways in which it was taken up by a multitude of writers and musicians. Even that old favourite H.P. Lovecraft, who of course gets brought up almost every second episode of Tom's Terror Trove, I believe mentions the Golden Bough in his seminal essay, Supernatural Horror in Literature. So anyway, the Golden Bough has this idea of renewal and rebirth. The ceremonial killing of the god king in the book is explicable by its perceived sympathetic relation to birth and death of the seasons and their effects on vegetation. Adonis, Attis, Osiris, Dionysus are all well-known instances of this kind of deity, a dying and resurrected god. The explanations of these beliefs, customs, and rituals are then applied to the original problem. The so-called Golden Bough is actually the mistletoe in which the priest-king has deposited his soul for safekeeping, suspended as it is between heaven and earth on the oak tree. This links back to one theory that the Golden Bough, while not explicitly referred to in the Aeneid, is in fact mistletoe. The picking of the mistletoe by his would-be successor, the god kings that is therefore a ritual murder to ensure continued fertility and rebirth. In the last chapters of the work, Frazer returns to the 3 stages of thought, which are compared to a web of thought. At the historic stage of primitive humanity, thought is a mixture of black and white threads, a patchwork of true and false notions. Later, it is dominated by the red thread of religion, and then by the white of science. To a web thus checkered and stained, thus shot with threads of diverse hues, but gradually changing colour the further it is unrolled, the state of modern thought, with all its divergent aims and conflicting tendencies, may be compared. Yet the history of thought should warn us against concluding that because the scientific theory of the world is the best that has been formulated, it is necessarily complete and final. We must remember that at bottom the generalizations of science, or in common parlance the laws of nature, are merely hypotheses devised to explain that ever-shifting phantasmagoria of thought which we dignify with the high-sounding names of the world and the universe. In the last analysis, magic, religion, and science are nothing but theories of thought. And as science has supplanted its predecessors, so it may hereafter be itself supplanted by some more perfect hypothesis. Perhaps by some totally different way of looking at the phenomena, of registering the shadows on the screen, of which we in this generation can form no idea. And it's hard not to see the parallels in Limbus company, in which the somewhat chaotic and unstable ideas of magic, unexplained natural phenomena, even luck, of course, in the case of Canto 2, are harnessed in scientific or pseudo-scientific ways. I should probably have mentioned this earlier, actually, as it's been brought up a couple of times, but there's a concept or technique known as intertextuality, which it's useful to have a working definition of. Intertextuality is the shaping of a text's meaning by another text, and in this case, text doesn't literally mean words on a page. It could be essentially any creative work or any standalone piece of art or literature or music. Take your pick. So either there are deliberate compositional strategies, you quote from something, you allude to something, you plagiarize, you translate, you pastiche, or you parody, or by interconnections between similar or related works perceived by an audience or reader of the text. Now this is really important because it means that intertextuality or the perception of such does not have to be a deliberate or have to have intent as far as its author is concerned. Although I would say that in Project Moon there is a lot of intent. Now these references are sometimes made deliberately and depend on a reader's prior knowledge and understanding of the referent, but the effect of intertextuality is not always intentional and is sometimes inadvertent. Phew! This is heavy stuff. Well done, if you've stuck with it. I could feel it getting away from me at some points, but I think it's really interesting to explore some of these ideas. By way of an interlude, when I was playing through Canto 2, I was trying to imagine what the Ting Tang Gang would sound like if they were mafia guys, and then if they were gangsters in a more like Guy Ritchie kind of vein. So, the Tom's Terror Trove Company players are proud to present Golden Bough Heist, 2 different versions, just as a kind of palate cleanser and a break. Don Quixote! I'm getting tired of lecturing these idiots on every little thing. We should just leave. Right as I tried to leave, someone wearing similar thuggish clothes to the one we just knocked out, with a face that looked just as rough, stormed into the shop. Hey, Codger! Have you seen our little wee Slimmy? Just what's going on here? We did our best to pretend to be innocent customers who just happened to be in the pawn shop at the wrong time. However, in an unfortunate concurrence of events, the goon came back to his senses. Who did this? Tell me now! Oh, that bean is going to regret the day they grew stems. Over there! That red time puss! The direction that finger was pointing was simply too unambiguous for me to pretend otherwise. Plus, there's no point in denying that I was meant by red time puss, as I'm sure there would be literally no one else matching that description in this entire district. Just so you don't get the wrong idea, I have nothing to do with these people or what happened here. I was just about to bring a towel to cool this poor fellow's head. That smarmy gaffer. I had no expectations for him in the first place, But that man really has a shaky reed for his backbone. Although the pawnbroker switching sides in a heartbeat and the finger-pointing clock slander, over something I wasn't responsible for too, hurt me a little, I was determined to stand firm.
Yeah, frijolitos over there.
Stop.
Freeze in your tracks.
Mostly because it was clear that we had to run right now.
Don Quixote!
I'm getting tired of lecturing these idiots on every little thing. We should just leave. Right as I tried to leave, someone wearing similar thuggish clothes to the one we just knocked out, with a face that looked just as rough, stormed into the shop.
Ayo, Codger! Have you seen our little wee Slimmy? Just what's going on here?
We did our best to pretend to be innocent customers who just happened to be in the pawn shop at the wrong time. However, in an unfortunate concurrence of events, the goon came back to his senses.
Who did this? Tell me now. That bean is gonna regret the day they grew stems. Over there, that red time puss.
The direction that finger was pointing was simply too unambiguous for me to pretend otherwise. Plus, there's no point in denying that I was meant by red time puss, as I'm sure there would be literally no one else matching that description in this entire district.
Just so you don't get the wrong idea, I have nothing to do with these people or what happened here. I was just about to bring a towel to cool this poor fellow's head.
Oh, that smarmy gaffer. I had no expectations for him in the first place, but that man really has a shaky reed for his backbone. Although the pawnbroker switching sides in a heartbeat and the finger-pointing clock slander, over something I wasn't responsible for too, hurt me a little, I was determined to stand firm.
Yeah, frijolitos over there. Stop. Freeze in your tracks.
Mostly because it was clear that we had to run right now. From the depths of Roman myth-making, flying through the centuries, through the esoteric burgeoning of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, all the way up to now, the use of intertextuality across the Project Moon setting, and in Limbus Company in particular, creates a powerful self-sustaining and self-perpetuating energy source. Like the Boughs themselves. Hey, it's all coming together. Sort of. This is not a case of plundering the past. It is not debased, but renewed, like T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, with which I began this episode. Well, the epigraph anyway, which is actually from the Satyricon attributed to the Roman writer Petronius. Anyway, other texts intrude, warp the meaning of the poem, cast light on some passages and shade on others. But unlike the withered prophet in her cage or jar, grown old beyond her time, the use of intertextuality in Limbus Company and the perpetual motion machine of the Golden Boughs breathes new life into the myths that sustain us all, as the threads of science, magic, and religion are woven anew into the tapestry that is human culture. Next episode, I might venture into the less overheated realms of characters and their original texts. A deep dive and expansion, perhaps as a series on my first Limbus Company episode. But it's early days and I'm still finding my feet here, so thanks for sticking with so far. I reckon I'll canvass for suggestions of what you all watchers and listeners might like me to cover via a poll, or you can just write to me directly. Emails in the episode description. If you have enjoyed this episode, do subscribe and stick around. Next episode will be part 10 of the original full-cast audio drama, The Crawling World. The previous 9 episodes are, of course, all available here on TTT. Before I sign off, I'll mention that I do all this myself, the wonderful voice actors who contribute their talents to The Crawling World notwithstanding, and therefore liking, subscribing, commenting, and rating, wherever you happen to be listening, helps out the podcast/channel immensely. My thanks to those who do show their support, however that may manifest, whether it's a donation, a comment, a review, etc. Thank you. Stay tuned for more Limbus Company-related lore episodes, the long-awaited conclusion of The Crawling World, and all sorts of other good things. With that, I will bid you good night and farewell for now. Take care. It's a scary world out there.